Today we are kicking off part 2 of our series called Help I'm. And what we're going to be talking about today is Help I Am Stressed. Can any of you guys relate with that? Matter of fact, everybody, let's just raise our hands real quick, because if you're alive today and you're a human, you have dealt with some sort of stress in life. Isn't that right? Matter of fact, we got some hands still raised right now. We had some people have some stressful... Look, I'll be honest with you. I had some stress this morning, right? And so today what we want to talk about is not just like some natural things to deal with stress. I think that those things are important. But we want to talk about how to deal with stress God's way. Because you know what? Some of the most practical, natural things can be some of the most spiritual things. How many of you guys know that God is interested in every single detail in my life and in your life? He cares about when we're having a peaceful day. He cares about when we're having a stressful day. And when he sees us as his children having a stressful day or the peace is gone, him as a wonderful, perfect, loving, heavenly Father, he sees us and says, hey, I want to help you with that today. So I wanted to start off this morning by sharing just a couple quick stats with you about stress. The first one is this, is that half of Americans say they are stressed, right? I think more than half in this room, probably we had 75, 80% said, yes, you know what, I might have had some stress this morning. 3 in 5 people said this, that in the last year, so look around, not the person next to you, 3 in 5 people said in the last year that they had so much stress on their life that they said, I couldn't cope with it. For some, that might have been like they felt like they burn out. For some, that might be like they felt like they had a breakdown. Like I can't adult today, right? I can't function today. I just need a break. And this was interesting to me. I think everybody that's ever had a job and is currently working can relate to this one. 63% of U.S. workers said that they're ready to quit their job just to avoid stress. This is from the Mental Health Foundation, some of these stats. That you've probably been at work or you're working at a place right now where you've had a stressful day, you've had a stressful week. You might be at a job where you've had some stressful years where you're like, oh, Jesus, help me, I'm stressed. I need this message every single day, right? When it comes to stress, there's really 3 different types of stress that we deal with in life. The first one is this. It's called stage 1. There's a progression to your stress. Some of you guys know that you can be a little bit stressed or you can be a lot stressed. And sometimes you have those days where you're like, nobody talk to me. I just need a break. I'm really stressed. But the first one that we go through is this. It's called the alarm stage. And what it is like the flight or fight syndrome. Now, what happens during that time? That's where most of us, when we're having a stressful day, we kind of feel that way. And how it feels is like this. All of a sudden, you start having where you feel like your blood pressure is rising, right? And then also, you start breathing a little bit heavier, right? And then actually, when you get real stress in this stage, you actually start sweating. You ever been so stressed you start sweating? Look, I got 3 boys, and there has been some days where I've been so stressed, taking care of them and doing different stuff, especially during the summertime where, look, they've got me in that alarm stage, right? I'm having a stressful day. Stage 2 is this. Like most of us have all dealt with this first stage, but stage 2 is this. It's called resistance stage. Where it happens with this is that the body adapts and resists the challenge. Just as a machine wears out, even if it's been properly maintained, so do we with constant wear and tear. What this means is this, is like you've learned to deal with it a little bit, with the stress in your life. Like you know how to deal with the alarm stage, and your body is just kind of getting an immunity to it. Like you deal with stress for so long where you just kind of like, just try to deal with it, and you can just go through the day, you can handle it. But in this stage, it's dangerous because you can only do that for so long, right? Just like a machine, if it's not properly maintained, it's eventually going to wear out, right? Well, the third stage is this. You might can guess what happens in the third stage. It's called the exhaustion stage, and this is the final stage of stress. And this is actually when stress just takes you out, where you're no longer here. It causes death in your life. Why? Because you don't have any more resources, emotionally, physically. It just has completely broke you down. And so today, obviously, you're probably not in that third stage, right? Because we're all here today. But we all kind of bounce in between, I think, stage 1 and sometimes stage 2, depending on what's going on in life. Stress happens in our life when we do one thing, when we push past our limits. That's been so big on my mind and my heart lately when I look at my family, my kids, when I look at just culture, or I'm on the news or social media or whatever it is, it seems like in today's society that there is just a constant push from the world to push us past our limits. Wherever you're at, keep going. Wherever you're at, work more, work harder, do this. You don't need peace, you don't need sleep. I wake up at 4 o'clock every morning and I get into the day. You see all these people pressuring about pushing your limits from all these different voices and people and all this different stuff. But stress happens in our life whenever we press past the limits in our life. Has life for you lately asked for more than your limits can take? I see a lot of people in the crowd saying, Pastor Ryan, yes. Yes, sir, that has. That's exactly how you know when you're dealing with stress in your life, is that life is asking more than your limits can take. It was funny this past week. It actually wasn't funny. It was really frustrating. It was actually kind of stressful. We video our messages every single Sunday, and typically it's pretty smooth. You get the video sent off, it's squared away, gets uploaded, no big deal. Well, there was something special about this week. No matter what I tried, I could not get this video to upload and do what it was supposed to do. Every time I tried to put this thing on my computer, I kept getting this error on my computer, and it said, "You're out of disk space." And so I'm like, well, what is disk space? I don't know this. I'm like, I know when I have too many photos on my phone, but this is a computer, and I didn't go to school for this. I'm just normal. But anyway, so it says you're out of disk space. So a little quick Google, and it was like, you don't have any more storage, Ryan. And so I'm like, oh, okay, great. How do I get more storage? How do I get more disk space? So I'm 30 minutes in at this point. It only should have taken 30 minutes. Anyway, long story short, I look at it and say, you've got to get rid of some stuff off this computer before you put anything new onto this computer. In other words, you're not getting this video to work until you do some other work to get rid of this stuff so you got some space on this thing. So I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I just did this 2 months ago. How have the things that have been removed from this computer are already back and have filled this thing up again where it's not functioning properly? My computer's stressed out. It's at its limits. And as I looked at that, I realized, I'm like, don't we do that same exact thing in life? Where maybe just a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, we were like, I've got too much on my plate, getting a little stressed out, not so much peace. Let me say no to some things, and let me say no to some people. Okay, I'm feeling good, life is good. Next thing you know, 2 months later, you're feeling stressed and you don't know why. It's because you've added, and I've added, too many things back onto our schedule and back onto our plate. We're out of space. There's no more limit in life. And when we're past our limits, just like that computer is saying, error, you can't do no more, you need to stop what you're doing, you need to pay attention. That is what stress in our bodies, in our life, in our mind is trying to tell us. It's like, when you feel stressed, Ryan, what you need to do is you need to stop and see what needs to be removed so that you can get back to a place of peace in your life. A few causes of stress, and you probably have your own list if I had to guess. As I'm talking this morning, you're probably thinking about, I'll tell you what stresses me out, that lady at work. That's what stresses me out, right? Or I tell you what stresses me out, my boss every single day stresses me out. But these are some of the main causes of stress that we have in our life. First one being this, health. Isn't that right? When I'm not healthy and you're not healthy, what do? You think about it all the time because you're just trying to get well. What else do? We jump on Google and we're like, why I got this pain in my arm right now? Don't do that, okay? It's going to stress you out even more. You're going to find yourself going to the emergency room thinking you're dying. You could get bit by a mosquito, and it's going to say you've been bit by some rare spider from South America, whatever it is. Go immediately and seek help. Don't get on Google and try to self-diagnose because you're going to get even more stressed, right? We get stressed when our health is not in a good place. What else does? Debt. Doesn't that stress all of us out? When I got more a month than I got money in my life, right? It stresses us out when we have to think about how am I going to pay for all this stuff that I need and some of the stuff that I want, right? Debt is one of those things that stresses us out. Another thing that stresses us out is this, comparison. If you've ever been on social media, you know exactly what I mean. It's got some wonderful content on it, but also what it does is, you know what? You can flip through very quickly and be like, oh, look, their kid's birthday party had a pony in it. Sorry, Johnny, you're just getting a cake this year and a Nerf gun, right? Hey, guess what? They went on a 2-week vacation to Italy. Isn't that nice? Where are we going? We're just going to roll down to the beach real quick this weekend. And so we have this comparison that takes place where it begins to stress us out because we think, I'm not enough and it's not enough. That stresses us out. How we look stresses us out. Look, all of us got ready this morning, and either we liked what we saw or we didn't like what we see, or we thought, oh, there's some things I'd like to change, and maybe you felt a little bit stressed because your hair wasn't just right. Housing stresses us out. Relationships, don't they stress us out? You could probably think about somebody right now. Maybe it's family, where you're like, Lord, I love them, but they stress me out. I can only deal with this much of them. Do you got people in your life like that, where you're like, a little dose is plenty for me. I can't take a full dose of you, or it's going to get to be a little bit stressful. And some of these things are funny, and these are things that we deal with. This is just real life. But some people that you're in here in this room today, and you've dealt with some real trauma. You've lost somebody you love. Maybe you've recently gone through a divorce. Maybe you're in a separation. Maybe you've had a health scare. Maybe something life threw at you that you did not expect that was going to be coming. And you're actually dealing with trauma right now, and it's got you stressed out. And you're saying, help, God. I'm stressed. I need your help. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to constantly think about this. The last thing I want to share with you, this is the little thing I added to the list, is that a lot of times what stresses us out is it's self-induced. What do I mean by that? I'm putting too much pressure on me. You're putting too much pressure on you. Way more pressure than anybody else in your life would ever be putting on you. A pressure to succeed, a pressure to be your best. And all the while, God is saying, you're enough. I love you just how you are. I'm here to help you. Yes, God wants us to get better at everything we're doing and to be there along our side. But sometimes what stresses us out is we avoid these difficult conversations that we need to have. You ever had those times in life where you role play in your mind with that person you need to have a difficult conversation with? If I said this and she said that or he said that, then I would say this, and then I would end up winning the argument or whatever it is, and I'm always right and they're going to be wrong. We avoid difficult conversations in life, and sometimes that stresses us out. And the longer we let it go, the longer it stresses us out. And the last thing is this. You know what stresses most of us out is this, other people's drama. Isn't that right? If we could just learn to stay out of other people's drama, some people are just dramatic, okay? Love them, pray for them, but don't spend a whole lot of time with them, because you know what they want to do? They want to make their stress your stress, and you don't need that. You tell them, save the drama for your mama, right? I don't want it. I don't want to hear about it. Man, I love you. I'll be praying for you. If you really need something, let me know. But you know what? Save all that drama. You're stressing me out. Sometimes that stresses us out. But what's got you stressed out lately? Nobody raised their hand. This is not going to be a time to testify, right? Be like, I would like to talk about what's stressing me out today. How much time do you have, church? Right? No. What is stressing you out lately? I want you to kind of think about these things as we kind of unpack here in just a minute about how to deal with stress God's way. You might be thinking about a thing in your head. You might be thinking about a person in your head. But when it comes to stress, we really have two options in life. We can do one thing, we can respond to it God's way, or secondly, we can react to it. If I respond to it, I'm putting God in control. To say, I'm recognizing I'm in this alarm stage, I'm feeling a little stressed right now. God, I'm coming to you in this moment. I'm asking for help. Tell me what I need to do. But where most of us live and what most of us do is we just react to it. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do whatever it takes to feel better, to make the stress go away, or try to handle the situation. And God is saying, no, you've got to respond, and you do not need to react, because if you react, you're just going to be by yourself doing your own thing without my help. How do I know I'm reacting rather than responding to stress? First one is this, is like, are you irritable? Right? When I'm stressed, I'm irritable. Don't talk to me. I can't even listen to you right now. Like, just stop. Give me a break. I'm irritable. Give me some time. That's how I know I'm reacting to stress and I'm not going to God with it. Also, maybe you just feel anxious where it's just like, I don't know what it is. I just feel like my chest is kind of tight and I'm walking around. I'm just like so full of care, just so worried. I'm just kind of stressed that we get anxious. For some of us, we know we're reacting to stress. We just start to feel depressed. We feel like there's no joy. We feel like there's no hope right now in life because the pressures that have put us past our limits are stressing us out to the point where we're just like, I just feel like giving up and not doing anything. I just feel depressed. For many people in here, one of the symptoms of stress that we deal with is this, is that we can't sleep. We have insomnia night after night. God, I just want to go to sleep. I just want to rest. But I got all this stuff going through my head. All these pressures that other people are putting on me, that I'm putting on me. I just need to rest, God. But if I could just turn off this movie in my head right now that seems to play just as soon as I put my head down on the pillow every night, that would be amazing. This is one thing that I do whenever I react to stress, and a lot of people do is this, is I eat too much or I eat unhealthy. I know you have never done that, but that's one of my go-tos whenever I get stressed is this, is, you know, for the last 20 years before we moved out here, we were part of a big church. Lots of people, year after year, it grew and grew and grew. But you know what? With success also sometimes comes stress because it means more people, more things to figure out, more situations to do, more strategy required, all these different things, right? And you know what I would do whenever I had a stressful day? We'd eat a Chick-fil-A right down the street. Man, God's chicken, right? I tell you what, I'd be, after a Wednesday night service, I'd be like, whew, it's been a long day. You should treat yourself, Ryan. And so I'd say, I need a number one, but I also need a number two. I think this is one of those times where I'm going to have 1.5, maybe 2 meals. And make sure you get me the milkshake because their cookies and cream milkshake was the best. And so, you know what? They should have known me by name because I was getting those milkshakes on a regular basis. We eat too much or we get to start eating unhealthy. Lastly is this. Sometimes when we're reacting and we're trying to handle it in our own strength is that we start drinking. Or if we have been drinking, we start drinking even more because we're just trying to deal with it. I just want to feel better for a minute. Or maybe we've been smoking, we start smoking even more. This is what statistics tell us that most of us do when we're reacting to stress. We just want to numb somehow. And everybody does that differently, right? For some, it's a milkshake. For some, it's a drink. For some, it's just, I'm going to binge watch 2 seasons on Netflix, whatever it is. I just need to get away. I need to rest and feel better. But one thing I've realized in life is this, is that you can't put darkness on top of darkness and expect to see a good result. If I'm feeling stressed, already God is saying, that's not of me. I can help you. But if I try to take matters into my own hand and say, you know what? I'm going to react to it. I'm already dealing with stress. And I'm going to sin on top of that, or I'm going to do whatever else to just make myself feel better. God is saying, no, just come to me when you're stressed. Because ultimately, our response is our responsibility when it comes to dealing with stress. I wish I could tell you this morning that there's some cure for stress. There's not. We're all going to deal with issues. We're all going to deal with problems. But what we can do is we can deal with it God's way and with God's help, where we can have many more days of peace and many more days of joy than we have stressful days. And that is what I want to share with you today about, like, help God, I'm stressed. Like, here's some ways to deal with stress in a godly way. Jesus himself actually told us. He said, in this life, you're going to have troubles. Like, you're going to have tests. You're going to have trials. You're going to deal with some stuff. You're going to deal with some people. But if I'm going to know how to deal with stress, ultimately, the first thing I need to do is this. If you're taking notes, is this. I've got to identify the triggers in my life that's causing me to stress. What do I mean by that? Is it me causing the stress, or is it others causing the stress? Sometimes in life, we're putting the pressure on us, nobody else is. I'm the one causing the stress. I need to step back and say, God, help me figure this out. What do I need to do in this moment? Other times, it's other people causing the stress. There are some situations in life where we can get out of relationships or we can separate ourselves from people that are stressing us out on a regular basis. But there's other times, too, where it's like they live in your house, right? Maybe the person that's stressing you out the most, maybe it's your spouse. Maybe it's somebody you work with. Maybe it's a boss. We've got to figure out who is stressing us out. We've got to identify these triggers in our life. Moses in the Old Testament. I love his story. What a crazy story this guy had. But one of the things I love about his story is just like the things that he dealt with. This guy dealt with so much stuff. But one of the things he dealt with is after he has taken the children of Israel out of slavery and he's trying to take them to the promised land, he's literally the leader of hundreds of thousands, millions of people that have had this exodus from Egypt. And he finally comes to this place one day where he is so stressed out with dealing with all the problems, the issues, and decisions that need to be made with all these people. All the while, they're basically saying, you're not a good leader, you're not doing a good enough job, you're not enough. And he's just hearing this day after day. He comes to God, and he's like, God, just take my life. Just take me out of this earth so I can be with you, because I don't want to deal with these people anymore. Moses, this spiritual giant, even dealt with stress. And I love this because Jesus himself, he felt the stress and the pressure when he was asked, when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane before he went to the cross. And he's having this conversation with the Father, and he says, if there's be any other way that this cup can pass from me. And in that moment, Scripture tells us that Jesus sweat great drops of blood because of the stress and the pressure that was on his body. Because he knew what he was about to go do, to die and give his life for the sins of the world. Moses dealt with it. Jesus had stress that he dealt with. I do. You do. Too much weight in our life and too much stress will ultimately cause a break. And that's why this morning I just want to share with you a few of these points, because God wants us living more peaceful days than stressful days. In life, like I kind of mentioned earlier about some of the ways that we react to sin, stress often leads us to sin. Why is that? Because we're just trying to take matters into our own hands. And so many times in life, we don't really do a great job of it. Whenever we need to go with God with something, we're going to ourselves and saying, what will get this to be better? And I love in Proverbs, it tells us this is how stress comes in into our lives. In Proverbs 4:20-23, it says, my son, pay attention to what I say. Turn your ears to my words. Don't let them out of your sight. Keep them in your heart, for their life to those that find them, and health to one's body. Above all else, guard your heart, because everything you do flows from it. The same way spiritual things come into our life is the same way things that is not of God comes into our life. In two different ways. It's by what we behold with our eyes, and it's by what we hear with our ears. That is ultimately when we're trying to identify the triggers in our life that's causing us to stress. It's coming from what I'm seeing, or it's coming from what I'm hearing. And so oftentimes we don't realize that we can turn on the news, or we can be listening to the gossip in the office, or whatever it is, or the problems that are going on, and all of a sudden we don't realize where the stress is coming from. We just realize, I feel stressed all of a sudden. It's because what we're putting in front of us in our eyes and our ears gets down into our heart. Proverbs tells us that everything in life flows from our heart, so we've got to watch these two things. That is how stress comes into our life. Isn't that right? You can go on Instagram right now, and you can just be flipping through Instagram Reels, and you know what? You'll start to get stressed out by what you're seeing and what you're hearing. Why is that? Because there are so many people out there talking about so many different things. You got people on there saying, oh, are aliens real? Are they about to come? Oh, and then you got other people saying, oh, all these different nations are joining together, and is there going to be another war? I don't know, and honestly, I don't care. I know who's in control and who I love and who I serve, and that is God. And I know that if I keep on looking at this stuff and hearing this stuff, all I'm going to do is feel stressed out. We've got to identify the triggers in our life to begin to get rid of the stress that we have. The second thing that we got to do is we've got to point the pressure back to God. All stress is it's the pressure coming on our lives from other things and other people. And I love what Jesus said. He's like, I want you to point the pressure back to me. Help, I'm stressed. God, what do I do? Jesus gives us the answer here in this moment. He says in Matthew 11:28, and I love the Message translation because it just so beautifully says it. This is Jesus talking right here. He says this, are you tired? Somebody say, yeah. Are you worn out? Yeah, right? Are you burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. Man, it sounds so good already. I want to recover my life. I want to live my best life, Jesus. He says, I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. What is the opposite of a stressed life? It is a life that is filled with freedom and lightness. Jesus said, when you're feeling this way, come with me, come to me, walk with me, work with me, do things how I do them, and you can have a lot more peace and a lot less stress. No, don't go run to the Chick-fil-A and get a milkshake. No, come to me, not to the chicken house, right? Come to me, not to the drink. Come to me, not to the Netflix. Come to me and point the pressure back to me, and you can have some peace back in your life again. David in the Old Testament, he pointed the pressure back to God. As I was looking about people in the Bible that deal with stress, I thought, you know what? As I think about the book of Psalms, you've got David just journaling all the tests and the trials that he is going through. This man's got next level stress. He's got people out to try to kill him. He's got many men trying to hunt him down and kill him, right? Look, I was stressed with the kids last week, but you know what? That ain't nothing compared to this man's running for his life. That's a different kind of stress, right? That's that resistance headed towards exhaustion type stress. And David in this moment, as you look at the book of Psalms, what is he doing? He is talking it out with God. He is singing it out with God. He is having conversations with God. He is reminding himself of who God is so that he can point the pressure back to God even while his life is on the line. He's saying, I am not going to take it. God, I'm going to give it to you. God, I'm going to point it back to you by reminding myself that you are my refuge. You are my strong tower. You are my strength. You are my Father. You will take care of me. You have done it before. You will do it again. I'm going to point the pressure back to you when life is trying to put too much pressure on me. Even Jesus himself. Jesus ministered to so many people during his earthly ministry. Thousands of people coming to his meetings. He's literally on tour, going from city to city. His staff is going with him, very much like this church, loading things in, loading things out, trying to get things ready to be able to minister to people. Natural things, spiritual things, right? And Jesus, you know what he typically would do at the end of a meeting? He'd say, guys, I need to withdraw for a while. I need to go spend time with the Father. What was he doing? He pointed the pressure back to the Father. Because as you look at the different things that the disciples did, look, that stressed anybody out, right? These were a young group of teenagers helping Jesus fulfill the biggest mission on the earth, and they didn't always get it right. Imagine some kids that go to this school or high school, and they got the most important job in history to help Jesus bring salvation to all humanity. It could be a little bit stressful. I know in my life there's been at least a couple of times where I felt myself just where the pressure was beyond the limits that I needed to have. And I would feel the pressure and I would feel the stress day after day. Sometimes it felt like month after month. By the middle of the year, work would be so busy that I knew if it was summertime, I had to do something different because I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to live this way. I want to live more peacefully, more joyfully, have more fun in my life. And there was a couple of times where I just felt like, I feel like I'm just broke down. And I had to come to God and say, I don't want to be like this anymore. What do I need to do? And without fail, the Lord always pointed me back to do the same thing that David did and Jesus did. He was like, you're not meant to carry it. Point the pressure back to me. You know what? Stress never saved anybody, but prayer has. In 1 Corinthians 1, 8 and 11, Paul is talking to the Corinthian church here, and he says this. He says, we think you ought to know, dear brothers and sisters, about the trouble that we went through in the province of Asia. We were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure, and we thought that we would never live through it. Like I said again, a whole nother level of stress, when you feel like your life is on the line. Paul is talking to the Corinthian church about this. This guy was something else. And he says, we were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure, and we thought we'd never live through it. In fact, we expected to die. But as a result, we stopped relying on ourselves and learned to rely on God, who was raised from the dead. He did rescue us from mortal danger. He will rescue us again. We have placed our confidence in Him, and that He'll continue to rescue us. And you are helping us by what? Praying for us. Then many people give thanks to God, who has graciously answered so many prayers for our safety. Paul in this moment is saying, like, life is crushing us. We thought we were going to die. We had no other way, no other ideas on how to deal with this. So we finally got to the place, we made the decision. I can't fix this. We're going to rely on God completely. We're going to pray to God, and we know that you're praying to us too. All we know how to do in this moment to deal with this stress is one thing. We realized something. At the end of all this, we just had to point the pressure back to God because He is able, He is faithful. He can do it every single time. We tried, we couldn't do it. We reacted to the stress. We thought we were going to die, and finally it got us to the point where we're like, I'm not enough, but He is enough. And God rescued him, and Paul said, even in this moment, we know He'll rescue us again and again and again. And you might be so stressed out in life right now where you're like, I just need to be rescued. I just need help. I need somebody to throw me a lifeline. I need something for my soul right now because all of the stress. And Paul is saying, point the pressure back to God through praying. Prayer will be the thing that saves us in those moments and us not taking care of it by ourselves.